Hey guys, we're gonna be talking about one of the books that really made me really interested in reading it. Is the book Determined by Robert Sapolsky. So the best thing about this book is that so I want to tell you why I started reading it in the first place. So I started reading this in the first place because I was reading the Sam Harris's book, which is about like it was basically deconstructing free will. I kind of forgot about the name of the book, but I was reading that book and I was like, okay, so I was just basically googling, okay, what's the next book that I can read to um, have a good understanding about free will, and this is the one that came first, and I was like, okay, let's do it, and it had like a quite a good amount of reviews, so I was like, okay, fine, let's do that, and then I got it, and then I started reading this book, and the one thing that kept coming over to me was that the first time I was really interested in a public speaker was Jordan Peterson, and he was very interesting because he'd have a main story, and then he'd have a lot of sub stories going along with it, and then finally it would just come together as a one big story to just. So basically, these side stories were proving his point with him with his actual point. So it's like all of these side points is just like making his main argument stronger and stronger. And this book kind of had the same effect on me, at least, and I think it was really well written. And now let's get into the actual content of the book. So first of all, uh, the author kind of describes all kinds of um, free will believers, like from absolute free will believers to people who are so called incompatible. So they kind of believe there's free will, but they also have contradicting views. So when you look at all that, uh, so the book is trying to take everything step by step, and he sort of gives like a timeline of how things have normalized with crime and all of that. So he gives the basic biology of so okay, how people can predict what I'm about to do, like few minutes before I actually do it. If I was strapped to the right machines, basically. So if if the person who is strapped to the machine uh, can if the machine can actually sense that the person is gonna do something even before they realize they're gonna do, how does that make how does that cause any free will? That was a basic question when he was describing the biology of the person. And then he was trying to get into arguments where, okay, so what happens now? You need to understand like what happened a few moments ago. In that case, he was trying to bring arguments like, okay, so how was your blood sugar level and um, things like that, and like what happened a few hours ago, and then what happened a few days ago, and what happened a few years ago. So because these kind of things, whatever happened, seems to have an impact on how the brain is adjusting to the environmental aspects. Because from what I see, is like most of the genes that we have is basically like switches. So no one gene acts the same way in all environments. So a certain type of gene only acts a certain type of way in a certain type of conditions. So in that case, which makes it very complicated for people to, I'm guessing it's hard to like isolate it, and then there is no one ideal condition for one particular gene because it just seems to act a different way in every single one of them. Was his point. And so when people uh, have these kind of genes, and if they were input in different positions, and they're obviously gonna be having different kind of uh, developmental structures in the brain, or the physiology, or the hormones, or anything of that sort. And I think prefrontal cortex is the last part of the brain. I'm not sure. my bad, I didn't take notes. I should. um, so I think the prefrontal cortex is like the last part of the brain that gets developed, and that is the part of the brain that i think I interpreted it something like, okay, it brings the conscience to the brain. Like, for example, okay, don't eat that cookie, or it's like the last line of like hesitation, basically. Okay, don't do that, don't say that, something of that sort. And you could split that into two other parts, is what the book said, and they all had their purpose. And when and because this is like the last part of the brain that is developed, which makes it uh, which also kind of means that if it's like only getting fully developed by 25, in that case what that means is that it's one of the last ones to get developed, because it's also learning a lot from the environment. It's like it's growing according to the environment as well. And if that's the case, then if you're 25 now, and what happened to you at 23 kind of matters, and probably what happened to you at 18 matters as well. So because it's kind of evolved in a way that it adapts to I mean, it grows according to the situation that you're in, which makes sense because life has been very unpredictable most of human history until very recently, I think. So it makes sense. And he brought on a new idea called chaoticism. And I think the basic gist of the idea was that um, any pattern of any recurring pattern can have uh, unpredictable outcome, but that doesn't make it indeterministic. So wait, did I say that right? Actually, uh, any pattern can can be can be deterministic but unpredictable at the same time. And these kind of uh, patterns exist throughout the universe, I think. Because, like, for example, uh, I think the example was like, okay, two individual things can exist, and they have their own individual set of duties and all of that. But for example, when they have enough of that together, they start to act a bit different. Like, for example, I forgot the exact example he gave me. It was like a single cell works a bit differently compared to like a cluster of cells. And the argument which he was giving was very convincing in the book, and it is something that people should read into. And then he was trying to give arguments about how people with epilepsy were persecuted in the earlier centuries, where they were thought they were witches. And he was also trying to say that how people who were getting epilepsy were actually just getting that as a result of witches putting a spell on someone, and they people were actually trying to catch, like, find out who this woman was at the same time as well, and killing them. And so it took so he was trying to show the journey of how epilepsy became like an actual thing, where people started understanding, okay, this is actually a physical condition. Sorry, it's a disease where people suffer from. And then and then after that, when things like that start to normalize, so he was trying to question, okay, so at what point can we come to an agreement where, as a society, we can say, okay, so this person, he's done certain things not because he chooses to do this, but it's just that the way life has unfolded for him has shaped his personality in a certain way, where he's more inclined to do certain things than the other. And in that case, if that's the case, if if one person is more inclined to do really terrible things, and what does it mean for the rest of us, was my question throughout. And in terms of free will, it's more like we all have our own inclined positions. Like, no, inclined. We're all inclined to do a certain thing, and then in that case, put us all together, and then we're all going to be doing our own inclined things. Uh, Meaning the things that we're more inclined to do than the other. And then in that case, what happens is that you're just going to be doing the same thing over and over again, no matter what. Uh, and then others are doing the same thing, and then you're just basically reacting based on your past experiences. And so how you respond now is just basically based on what happened moments ago or months ago or years ago, based on how your brain is formed, basically. And which was very interesting to think about, because when I finished Sam Harris's book Free Will, I was basically just questioning. I was like, okay, so if people were always meant to have a proclivity to do something, in that case, with politics, like there's left and right, and so people were always meant to be just fighting, like there is no reconciliation. And so I was thinking, okay, so people can have be on the right and on the left, and then they just keep going back and forth by reacting to each other based on their own inclinations. And that's what I got from the book. So it was a great book, really good. And I would highly recommend someone to read that. But yeah, if you guys have any thought about free will, please leave a comment. Thank you.